Hey everybody, in this video I am going to show you how to set up your processing sketch from the very beginning. So I've opened up a new sketch here, and by default you can kind of see that it just names it this arbitrary name. I think the year, the month, it just gives it this name. Every time you open it, it's going to be something different. So the first thing we need to do, we have a totally blank sketch here, is to write two functions that we need to run our sketch. So the first function we need to write is a setup function. So you're going to start with a void. This is actually the return type of the function, but you don't really need to worry about that right now. You do void setup, make sure you put a space between the two, and then an opening and closing parentheses, and then a space, an opening curly brace, and then you're going to hit the space bar a couple times and do a closing curly brace. So to write something in this function, it has to happen between the two curly braces. Alright, so we'll get to that in a second. The other function we're going to write underneath it, so give yourself a space or two, start with void again, and this one's going to be called draw. And then opening, closing parentheses, a space, opening curly brace, and a couple spaces and a closing curly brace. So this draw function is actually going to loop over and over again. So this is where we're going to start drawing our shapes and things. The setup function just tells the program some things it needs to know initially, but it only runs one time. So let's go back to the setup function. Make sure you're between the two curly braces in this first line, and the first thing we're going to do by default is tell the program how big we want our canvas to be. So the default setting for the canvas, if I just hit run, it gives me this size. Alright, this is what the program does if you don't tell it anything. But we want to give our canvas a specific size of 20 pixels by 20 pixels. So I'm going to stop this. And this function is called size. So you type size, don't put a space, opening parentheses. Now inside these parentheses, we need to put two values, the width and the height, in that order. So luckily both of those are the same in this one, so I'm just going to put 20 for the width, separate them by a comma, 20 for the height, close the parentheses, and then make sure at the end of each statement you put a semicolon. If you don't put that semicolon there, you'll actually get an error. I'll take it away and you can see down at the bottom here it says missing semicolon. So if you try to run this, you'll get an error and your program won't run. Alright, oops, let me put a semicolon back there. So now let's run it and see what we have. So now our canvas is 20 by 20. The next thing I want to change is the color of the background. Alright, so underneath size, make sure you're still between the curly braces. The next function we're going to write is called background. B-A-C-K-G-R-O-U-N-D, background. Opening parentheses. Now, in this function, it calls for three values, three numbers, and they are RGB numbers. So that's how we define color: red, green, and blue. So I'm going to make my background white. These values can be between 0, which is the lowest, which would be black, and 255, which is the highest they can go. So I'm going to make all three values the highest they can go, which will give me white. Closing parentheses, don't forget your semicolon. Let's go and hit run. There we go. So now my background is white. See if you can try some different colors if you want to. If you kept the first one, this is red, and then the next two made 0, let's just do that real quick. Guess what color that would be? Full red, no green or blue. You guessed it. It was red. So you can mix these colors up and make a different color background if you want. But I definitely wanted to avoid that gray. So I'm going to go back to making this white again because I really want a lot of contrast. There we go. Okay, so we're going to stop here, and you've got everything set up to start drawing. So in the next video, I'm going to show you how to save this sketch and upload it to Google Drive so that you can access it on any machine.